Hi, I'm M.
And my name is Bea.
And this is
Fangirls Anonymous. A quick warning, this podcast is not for kids.
We get into some pretty explicit stuff.
But if you're still with us and into that, welcome.
It's FicClub time, baby! Hi, Bea.
Yes, it is. It definitely is, M. How are you today before we get going on all this fun stuff?
I am great because I really do love the fic we're going to be talking about for this whole episode. It's just fun and sad, and I love fic that is fun and sad put together. That is mwah, 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 chef's kiss. I love it so much. How are you?
I am doing pretty good myself. I am also excited. I have read this fic many times. It is a personal favorite, so I'm always ready to talk about a personal favorite.
Yeah, obviously we had to know about the fic before picking it to be put into FicClub, but you and I have both read this fic multiple times throughout our fic reading careers, and I really think that showcases how good it is. And I'm excited. We have a couple of emails. We have a couple pages of notes and quotes, or notable quotes, and we also have a lot of opinions. And we're always excited about everything we do, but FicClub is a particularly fun thing to do, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But before we start getting into Play It Again by Metisket, we thought we would talk about just a little bit about our next installment of FicClub. It's going to be Lotus Eaters by Aldora89. It is a Spurk fic. Please go ahead and read it, and then send us whatever you'd like in our email. It is also very good. We don't pick not very good fic for FicClub. It's also long. This season we decided to pick some long fics. Next season we're thinking about changing it up a little, but we'll get into that. We also have a Patreon. If you want to support us, the possibility is out there. It's okay if you don't, but also we really appreciate it. It's amazing that people want to pay us actual real dollars for the things we're doing. So thank you to our patrons, and thank you to anybody who is even possibly considering it, because we really appreciate it. Anyway, so Play It Again. Oh, wait. Bea, I'm forgetting something.
You are?
I am. I'm forgetting something.
Well, obviously you haven't, because you've remembered it. What is this thing you've remembered?
I remembered that our last FicClub episode was such a hit that it got onto the radar of a lovely person, Anonymous, who wrote War Children. And they sent us this email, of which I'm going to read right now. Hi guys, it's Anonymous. Smiley face. I happened upon your podcast and was very excited to see there was an episode featuring a fic of mine. I listened to it this morning on the train, and it made me so happy I just had to send you a thank you email. So, thank you for all the kind things you said. It really moved me a lot, and it was super interesting to hear you both analyzing my stuff. Wishing you lots of joy and lots of listeners. Anonymous. Oh my god! When I saw that we had that email, I just really wanted to read it out loud on this podcast and say thank you for contacting us and saying all of those kind words, Anonymous, because you're awesome and we loved your fic so much that it was the first installment of our FicClub.
Thank you. Thank you for putting it out there. Thank you for contacting us. We love hearing from anybody who listens, even if it's just a quick little, hey, we listened and we liked it, or hey, we listened and we didn't like it. Please, we love hearing from everybody.
But yeah, seriously though, we treasure the emails that we get, and I always, in a huff, send them to Bea because it's very exciting. So, now that that's out of the way, finally, we can talk about Play It Again, because it is such a good fic. Do you want? How about let's do that quote, Bea?
I'll do italics.
Okay, I'll be the non-italic one. Okay. Stiles is driving.
Stiles is driving.
Stiles is driving like the hounds of hell are chasing him because, yeah, they basically are.
Stiles is driving like an idiot, and he knows it, but he was supposed to pick up Scott 20 minutes ago.
If by the hounds of hell you mean Peter Hale, maybe that's generous. Uh, Maybe Peter doesn't rate that kind of respect.
If he's any later, he's going to have to hand in his best friend card. Scott will make a disappointed but not surprised face. It'll be the candle on the cake of awful this year has been.
This is all Derek's fault. It shouldn't take a genius to work out that an undead uncle who killed your sister isn't the kind of guy you should hang around with. Seriously, Derek?
This is all Dad's fault. If he hadn't decided the time for the Safety in the Woods lecture was now, Stiles would have left on time and would not be speeding. Seriously, Dad?
Of course, Derek is dead now. No point being mad at a dead guy. Fuck, Derek is dead.
Of course, Dad has found like 3 bodies in the woods this month. It's fair to be worried. That's a freaking lot of corpses all of a sudden.
He's starting to think he's gotten away clean when Peter runs in front of the car out of nowhere. He slams on the brakes, but he knows he's screwed. He slaps his hand over his heart and activates the rune on the pendant there, untested and untried, for use in last resort only. He has no idea what's going to happen. This is such a Derek plan, but it's definitely last resort time because Peter is grinning and reaching for the car.
He's starting to think he won't be more than half an hour late when a deer runs in front of the car out of nowhere. He swerves to miss it and slams on the brakes, but then he sees the tree and he knows he's screwed. He has a split second to realize that he's going to die and that it's going to kill Dad.
The car crashes.
The car crashes.
Oh man, that gave me all of the feels because I did so much theater when I was little. But I really love how this fic starts because that's the very beginning of the fic, and it takes a couple of lines as the reader to figure out what's happening. It's two different styles, like from two different universes, having somewhat convergent events in their universes at the same time.
But obviously really different interiors. Like,
Yeah.
obviously these are two very different people with different problems, because I don't know about you, but I think that perhaps your friend being dead is on a slightly different scale than, oh geez, I'm late to pick up my friend.
Yeah. Slightly different. And also, I'm a terrible best friend, and, you know, this year has been terrible, all of that stuff. Man, I just, it's a really easy way, but also inventive way for the author to get that across, that there are two different styles and their lives are completely different, and yet they are both having very similar experiences at that exact moment. And it's just chef's kiss. I love it when writers do this because a lot of times, I don't know, people who write published works tend to get the creativity sucked out of their works more often than fan fiction authors. And a lot of editors would call this beginning hokey. But I don't care. I think it's fun. And what's wrong with a little hokey every now and again?
I mean, there's something really powerful about having this moment of tension and this, as an audience, not knowing what's going on because you're being told blatantly contradictory things.
Yes.
And so you're like, wait a minute, there's a pattern here. Oh no. And then you get to this collision, this literal crash
Yeah.
together of everything. And
It's so good.
it's a great way to open a story with a bang, pun intended.
Maybe we should talk about what the actual story is about. Maybe.
I don't know. I mean, all you listeners out there who read it, you already know.
Yes.
All of you who didn't, pause it right now. Go read it.
Yeah, pause it, or if you don't care and you're still listening to this episode, you can listen to what we're about to say. But basically, the fic is about it's two different, I mean, okay, our main Styles character, I know, this is gonna be rough. Our main Styles character is, I mean, he's technically not even from the universe that the show is from.
Mm-hmm.
He is extended beyond the show.
Let's call him worst case Styles.
Yes, worst case Styles is from the worst case scenario of Teen Wolf.
I would argue, and we may have some discussion about this, that it's not even like a worst case beyond the end of canon, but there's actually a point in the middle of canon where they divide out and become this other worst case, and that's sort of where we find him.
Yeah. And I love that. It's not just the Stiles that we know from the show. It's also a different Stiles that we know from the show. And then there's Stiles B.
There's there's I think we should call him best case Stiles, in which Stiles never got involved with any of the canon events.
And Scott didn't either. So, and that's the reason why Stiles didn't. So Stiles. So how about okay, Stiles best case,
Mm-hmm.
Stiles B and Stiles W. So Stiles B got killed by his own making, essentially, the very beginning of the fic.
At least he's implied to be dead. There is magic shenanigans that happen, so it's entirely possible he just got yeeted into a different dimension. We'll get there.
That isn't true.
No, it is left completely ambiguous.
No,
It is.
Stiles tells
Yep,
Scott later in the fic that the other Stiles is actually
probably dead. He's probably dead.
Maybe.
And that he is as good as dead. It is never actually fully explained whether or not
True.
He just got dumped into other Stiles' body and
Yes.
through a freak luck ended up surviving, at least some of the time.
Yes, that's true. If he did actually survive by going into another Stiles' body, which I want to know that universe, then he will never be able to come back because there's no magic there, ostensibly, at the universe he's in. Anyway. So, let's just say, though, for the sake of semantics, that he is dead. And Stiles,
he's functionally dead.
He's functionally dead in the story. And Stiles W, because of the rune that he activates on the pendant that he has in the car that is about to be, mauled by Derek's uncle, Peter, he's able to forcefully basically throw himself into the other Stiles' body in a different universe. Because it's everything is bad. Everybody is dead except for me, kind of a last resort thing.
It's not quite that bad, but it's close.
I mean, it's there are only a few people of the entire cast that are still alive in his previous universe. But so in the new universe that he's in, Derek is still alive. And not only is Derek still alive, but nobody in the Hale family died in that Hale family fire.
Well, I don't think the fire ever happened.
It never did. It never happened.
Hence why nobody died in it.
But they're still werewolves. Yeah.
But secret. Even more secret.
Yes. And the fic is essentially just Stiles figuring out how to deal with all of the emotions that he has experienced in his other universe, falling in love with Derek, again, ostensibly, and, making sure that the Hale family doesn't die this time. And it's really good. It's really, really good.
I'm intrigued by the way that you put it, because if you were asking me to elevator pitch this, I would actually say it's more about him slowly coming to the realization and then dealing with the trauma of his own universe and having to and also trying really hard to fix it. I would say that in my reading of it, any romance that appears is extremely secondary to a lot of the other themes.
Oh, totally. What I'm trying to say, though, right now is what it's about. And what we're really going to get into in this fic is what it is, which is what you just described.
Yes.
Yeah. The plot is what I just said, but we're going to get into really what it's supposed to be, what it means. And I'm excited. So, do you want to do an email? We can talk about an email right now.
Yeah, that's a good segue into some other people's thoughts.
We got an email. Very exciting. Thank you to all the people who have sent us emails. And this is how it starts. I know 5 things about Teen Wolf, and I like it that way. But this fic, I was never lost. Something would happen, and I could just roll with it without being taken out of the narrative. And the tone was amazing. Simultaneously, a hilarious supernatural theme sitcom and a sweetly sad character piece about one young man taking the weight of the world on his shoulders. And then, being told at the end that he doesn't have to, that it's okay to have people help, and what a blessing it is to have those people available to lend such aid when needed. I read the whole thing over a few days, saw it, had a podfic, and immediately downloaded it to start listening. Absolutely choice stuff. The fic author needs to give a TED talk on how to do such amazing character writing, because how is it so good? I need to know the secrets. I love getting rambly emails like that so much. It's perfect. It's comments, and I love it.
Mm-hmm.
This person, I would incredibly agree on their estimation of what it
Mm-hmm.
is. Simultaneously, a hilarious supernatural themed sitcom and a sweetly sad character piece about one young man taking the weight of the world on his shoulders. Entirely true. And this is why we like Stiles as a character, I think.
Yeah, I feel like dear email giver, that you pretty much summed up the major strengths of the Teen Wolf fandom at
Yeah.
its very, very best. It should be simultaneously hilarious and tragic.
Yes.
Um, and this does a great job of doing that, where you have Styles playing to his strengths as being kind of in show he is the goofy best friend, and in this fic it never really gets rid of that aspect of his character. He is the goofy best friend, but now he's also the protagonist who has all the information and knows how to fix things. So he goes about it in his usual goofy fashion, but with these really heartbreaking like implications to what he's doing and how he's doing it. Like, for example, in the fic when he's stalking the Hales, that's funny.
It is.
That he's just lingering in their periphery, and they're all like, "What is with this kid?" Because they know he's there. And they're finally like, "Would you like to come in? Are you hungry? Are you a stray cat?" And
Well,
he's like,
I also think it's really interesting how, because they're werewolves, they're able to smell the emotions of people around them. So every time they get a whiff of what he is, every time they scent him a little bit, they are experiencing intense trauma and grief from this 15-year-old kid when he looks at them. And it's like, what happened to you? Kind of a
again, they have
situation.
this sort of reaction like, "Are you a stray cat? Do you need to come in out of the
Yeah,
rain?"
yeah.
Um, And they're not wrong about this assessment, but at the same time, you, the audience, have this meta knowledge where he's gone through some pretty bad stuff and he has some reasons to be wary and to keep his distance or to kind of poke at them and test them, in order to get what he needs to do done. So again, he's the funny, goofy best friend, but you have this meta knowledge that makes it a lot less funny and sometimes more funny because he's still like when he shows up, he ends up flailing and embarrassing himself.
I'm thinking maybe I should. Okay, so this is like my favorite like section of the fic. I adore this section because so this is set right after Styles kind of drops the a little bit of a bomb to Scott. Scott is Styles' best friend in the Teen Wolf world, and in the show, Scott was really meant to be the main character. But Styles was such a good character, and Dylan O'Brien was really good at acting Styles, being Styles. So much so that essentially Styles kind of became the main character of the show in real life.
It doesn't help that I'm gonna put out there, the show did not do itself any favors by making it have really heavy. It took a lot of inspiration from like fantasy horror and the supernatural sort of thing, and then it gave you the most moralistic, upright, boring protagonist.
So true. So
Like,
true.
horror doesn't really go super well with very straight-laced moralistic heroes unless the horror is their decline. So
And he never does. That's the thing.
yeah, so they kind of shot themselves in the foot there, if you got to be honest. Having said that, I personally find Scott to be an excellent secondary character. He
Agreed.
does plays great foil to Styles, who's a lot
Yes.
more interesting.
Yes. But this is I think it's the only time in the fic that it is in Scott's perspective. And I really really enjoyed it. I wanted to read it out loud. Scott's pulling in air as hard as he can, but it's not doing him any good. His lungs feel like a mess of knots in his chest. He's not totally sure he wants the air anyway. Maybe this will be easier to deal with if he blacks out for a while. The worst thing about this, Scott thinks, the very worst thing is that, in a way, he likes this Stiles better. And that makes him the most terrible human being on the planet. Oh god. It wasn't so bad when he thought his Stiles was still alive somewhere, that he'd be back, that this Stiles was like the cool older cousin who visits for a while and then heads home. It was okay to be kind of dazzled by him then. Now, though, now it's like worst best friend betrayal ever, because his Stiles isn't just on extended alternate universe vacation. He's dead. Scott should be mourning. He is. He is mourning. And he should definitely not be seeing any bright side to this. There is no bright side to this. But he can't help it. This Stiles, it's like he's been burned down to the bare essentials or something. He seems just older and calmer and more in control, more aware of what's happening to him and what's important to him. And the list of important things, Scott's way up at the top of that again. He hasn't seen Stiles look at him like this since they were little kids, and Scott used to get beaten up. That was a long time ago. Everybody figured out pretty fast that Scott's best friend was a tiny ball of rage with no sense of self-preservation, and once they figured that out, they decided the smart thing was to leave them both the hell alone. God, and it's basically impossible to believe Stiles is dead when Scott's looking right at him. It's hard not to feel lucky when this Stiles is like all the best things about his Stiles concentrated. Scott's pretty sure he's never going to forgive himself. Man, this is just not stuff that people have to deal with in real life. And I love it when an author kind of goes into how somebody would feel in a situation that is completely unnatural. It's so fun. But also poor Scott. Oh man, poor Scott.
I feel like at this point it is worth clarifying
Yeah.
that for all our back and forth discussion about whether or not best case Stiles is dead, again, he's functionally dead.
Yes.
It is assumed for all intents and purposes that this is so, because it is stated outright later in the fic. Stiles has no possible way of going back where he came from. That avenue is closed. So, having said that, this is the information that Stiles tells Scott is that he's dead, basically.
Yeah.
But technically speaking, since Stiles doesn't actually know how the magic worked, he can't actually say that his displacing this Stiles didn't send him back to worst case universe, or even onwards to a completely different universe in an enormous domino chain of Stiles that will eventually loop back around.
Yeah. Oh god. That's hilarious.
We have no way of knowing, and to be completely honest, that's okay. There is no real need to know. We care
okay.
only about worst case Stiles.
Yeah, it's just not only does the author do a really good job with Stiles, obviously, and I think that they do a pretty good job with Derek too, but they also do they're quite good at making sure that they understand their characters enough to be able to write Scott well, and Lydia well, and Allison well, and all of these people in an alternate universe. In a universe where the stuff that happened to them didn't happen to them in that universe. It's just neat, and I like fan fiction because that's just a lot of fan fiction. Oh my god.
That's actually one of my favorite things about this, is the author walks this beautifully fine line between having a world that is different in some jarring ways, but the actual differences that are explained are plausibly similar enough that you understand why these people are still they're still the same kind of people that Stiles met. A great example is actually Allison, who in worst case universe, a la canon or canon adjacent universe, her entire family has a vendetta against werewolves because, according to the stories that she was told, it was werewolves who ended up, being the problem. But in best case universe, it's actually witches, because supposedly witches murdered her grandfather and aunt. And so she has that same fire and drive that you see, and you can still see shades of who she was, but it's been, redirected slightly. So it all you can see how she became the same kind of a person and had the same kinds of experiences, even if they are different than worst case universe. So it it's actually one of my favorite things because, as we'll be talking about later, time travel, alternate universe, specifically like alternate dimensions. I love it all, but one of the things I encounter is people trying to change things a lot, which is great. I mean, it's a really interesting, inventive thing to do, but I will freely admit that I sometimes just like to read these sorts of things because it's canon, but not. But it's still canon.
Canon slightly to the right.
Yes, it does a great job of that in this fic, where
Yeah.
it's, oh, for sure canon. It's completely recognizable. You understand what's going on, but not quite.
Yeah. And that's what makes it interesting. Especially when you throw in a character like Stiles W, who just, he is like what Scott describes, completely synthesized and just like has dealt with so much trauma that he has had to become an incredibly strong and resourceful person and then throw that into a 17-year-old's body.
I'm not actually 100% sure how old he is in this fic. High school aged, but somewhat ambiguous past that.
No, he is 17 because there's another installment of him turning 18, and it's like within 6 months of this fic.
Ah,
Yeah.
I really enjoyed Derek in this too because, gotta be honest, the way that he's characterized, I just get this faint sense of bemusement the whole time from him.
Me
He's like,
too.
you just sort of appeared in my life, and I'm not, mad about it, but I am definitely confused.
Yeah.
Like, you're very loud and you're right here, and I'm not 100% sure what to do with this
He
information.
seems like, I mean, because he has not grown up with all of the pain that he grew up in, like Derek W. Derek B has not grown up with any of the pain that Derek W did. And you know, Styles isn't used to that. So he is always calling him like a teddy bear or like a softie. And no, he's not. He's still kind of scary because he's a werewolf. But because he's the youngest or one of the younger kids, he's not like being brought up to be a leader in the pack. He's kind of allowed to be soft. Softer than like, Talia.
It's really delightful when Styles interacts with the pack, where he's used to supernatural creatures who are violent and scary and out to get you. And he meets the pack and they're trying to be scary, and he's just like, nah, this is fine. Like, the only thing that actually gets him is his own inherent trauma. Otherwise, he is completely unthreatened by them. And when like Derek does things like intentionally tries to be like grumpy or gruff, he's
Yeah.
just like, oh, finally a familiar face. And they're like, sorry, what? And he's like, don't worry about it.
They're like, what happened to you? That you have these reactions that most humans would never, like, they would run away. Like, oh god, poor Styles. Okay, so we got another email, and it's long and it's fun. So, hi B&M. First off, I love your podcast. I was just recently introduced to it a few weeks ago, and I enjoyed listening to the episodes. I haven't finished them all yet, but I'm getting close. The Men in Fandom episode and the two-parter about asexuality in fandom were my favorites. On to the FicClub now. I went in knowing very little about Teen Wolf, just knowing who Stiles and Derek are, knowing that there are werewolves, and that Stiles is kind of a bi disaster, thanks to YouTube compilations lol. I like reading fics for fandoms I'm not in, because I usually end up finding a new show or movie to watch, which has proven true with this one too. This fic was so good. I've already reread it a few times and fell down a steric rabbit hole on AO3 the last few days. I'm kind of sad that I wasn't in the fandom when the show was airing, as I was a werewolf kid and still am a huge werewolf fan, but I'm super glad to get into the fandom now. This fic was just fantastic. I enjoyed the reveals of Styles not being from that universe. I do wish that we got a more dramatic reveal of Talia and the rest of the pack, but the Peter reveal was so great. I also enjoyed Styles getting the chance to relax at the end instead of being an anxious mess. As I am just starting to watch the show, I can't say much on how in or out of character everyone is. Plus, that it is a different universe than the show technically, but I did enjoy all of the characters and thought that they were well written and enjoyable. Overall, I would rank this in my top 20 fics. Also, this podcast has made me want to get back into writing. I haven't written fic since 2020, and with my college classes over for the summer, I now have the time and motivation to write. So thank you for inspiring me to write again, and thank you for putting out an awesome podcast. Wow, thank you to that person so much. What a wonderful, lovely email. And also, of course, thank you for saying that this podcast has made you want to start writing fic, because that is all we can ask for. Please, if you are inspired in any way because of our podcast, I mean, just know that we're really grateful that you are, because that's an amazing feeling. Regarding the FicClub stuff, I mean, we already talked about how in character we think that the characters really are. The author did a really good job.
I would argue that it's not, to a certain extent, a matter of being in character, because with the exception of Stiles, who's explicitly from a not quite canon universe, everybody else is from an alternate universe, so I don't really care if they're in character enough or not. Like, I don't know. You have justified the characterization you have. That's lovely. I like that.
I would call that in character, because if Allison was a bubbly pink little person that, didn't know anything, or if Lydia was a vapid teenage girl that
I love those two examples because, strictly speaking, those are both actually canon, sort of.
I don't know.
They're definitely not their real personas, but they are personas that both of them have donned at various points in the show. So
true. I don't know. If Scott was a badass, then that would be not in character, right?
No, that would not be in character. They tried with that one. It didn't really stick with him.
Didn't stick. They put him in a jean jacket or a leather jacket. They took it off next episode.
For so many good reasons.
More dramatic reveal with Talia and the rest of the pack. Interesting. I
sort of get where they're coming from.
They wish that they had got that.
I don't necessarily wish they had, but I do thrive on the melodrama of those kinds of reveals, so I get it. Like,
yes.
Peter was just perfect, though. Everything about him talking with Peter.
I loved that Peter. I want that Peter in the real canon. I want okay, I have talked about this in the past, but I adore left-hand characters, okay? Who still have a moral code. I don't like characters that don't have moral codes. They'll just do whatever the hell they want. I'm not into that. I like characters. I guess I like anti-heroes because they have moral codes, but they're willing to do crazy bullshit things for the people that they love. So, and I think that Peter in this fic is that. So I completely agree with this person that Peter reveal was so great, because oh my god, I want that Peter in every fic I read from Teen Wolf fandom now. I don't want old Peter from canon. I want this Peter. This Peter needs to be in everything. And the only reason why he isn't like the Peter from Teen Wolf in this universe is because his entire family is still alive. Oh god.
Which completely tracks with his characterization, at least in... I'm going to say that he is characterized in a variety of ways in the show, depending on what they need, but at least in the first season or so, that feels very in character for him.
Agreed. Yes. He wasn't badly burned in the fire, and he didn't lose his children and wife. Mate. And man, does it just make his character that much more interesting, because not only is he a dad, and I love dad characters, but he is still creepy. He's a family man that's creepy, and I adore it.
It's his lurking. He just is a chronic lurker.
He's like Gomez Adams, and I love it. I love it so much. So, yes, I wish that Talia and the pack, I wish that had been more of a reveal to Stiles, okay? But Peter was perfect. Totally agree with everything that this person has said. Okay. Thank you so much for that email. Loved that email. It was great. Speaking of characterization, I think this next quote that I have is definitely exemplifies the characterization that the author put into the fic for these characters. Just to set it up a little bit, because it kind of comes in the middle of a quote itself. This is Stiles in his bedroom with Allison, Lydia, and Scott. And they're talking about the existence of magic. And that's basically all you need to know, I think, right? Do you remember anything more?
Allison is not super fond of Stiles at this point. I think that's about it.
Okay, okay. And Stiles is the person who is talking at the very beginning. You should be aware that Allison is not the only person in the world who doesn't approve of magic, or werewolves, or any number of other creatures of the night. There are some paramilitary groups dedicated to wiping them out, in fact. And while they're supposed to follow moral code, Allison flinches and looks away. Is that a win? It doesn't feel like a win. A lot of them don't bother in practice. They're more like, yikes, it's scary, kill it. That's not true, Allison insists. Really? Why do you think I got into this magic in the first place, huh? It was after a few too many, yikes, he associates with scary things, kill him experiences, okay? You could have just stopped associating with them. That's what you took away from that? They're dangerous, Stiles. You're dangerous, Allison. Your dad is dangerous. My dad is dangerous. Even Scott, under the right circumstances, can be dangerous. And Lydia knows how to make a self-igniting Molotov cocktail just off the top of her head. How do you know that? Lydia hisses. What do you mean, even Scott? Scott demands. And Allison? Allison laughs for a second before clapping a hand over her mouth and looking horrified at herself. That is a definite win. Oh man, Styles is so funny. Styles is so funny in this fic. He just has all of this. He not only has rapport with other characters, but he has rapport with himself. You know, that's just who he is as a person. I really loved that quote, and I needed to say it. It's also just an example of how funny the fic is. The fic is just really hilarious. The jokes hit almost 100% of the time. A lot of these quotes have kind of been throughout the fic, but I know that you have some other things you wanted to talk about, Bea. What were those things again?
We've talked a lot about characterization and some of the lovely dramatics that we get, reveals and secrets and people getting impacted. I think one of the things this does really well, though, is it talks about trauma it's a very oblique way, but it kind of punches you in the gut because again, this is a very traumatized Stiles who's in a world where the sources of his trauma have not happened and is, to the best of our limited ability to know, would never happen. I mean, when Stiles gets dropped into this world, nobody who would know about werewolves in his world knows about them in this world. So for all he knows, werewolves don't exist and everybody's just baseline humans. And so you have him kind of, at least initially, seeming kind of paranoid. And then as the fic goes on, you realize, okay, so he is paranoid, but also it's justified, and also he's using it to help people. So you have to ask, like, well, how bad could it be? And he seems functional. And you get to this point in the fic where it's pretty obvious to everyone, including himself, that he's been doing okay, but not great. And then he has this terrible screaming nightmare. And he, of course, because in his world, these things have just sort of compounded to a point where it's their baseline for okay is very different. So he has the screaming nightmare and assumes, oh, it's fine. Nobody will notice, right? Yeah, no, his dad definitely notices and is really, really worried and concerned about it. And so, in addition to all of this stress he's been putting himself under in terms of trying to fix all of these things before they can happen, and sort of put the world to rights, he suddenly is being forced to confront the fact that he's not okay and hasn't been for a long time.
Yeah, like the first time he has an adult or a group of people in his life that are actually concerned for his well-being. He's finally like, shit, maybe I'm not okay. Ugh, poor Stiles.
And the fact that he also, at the point that his dad is, encountering this behavior from him, he still hasn't told his dad that he's from a different universe. He's told Scott, and I think at this point that's it. So his dad is super concerned, like, oh no, what happened? And he's like, well, I can't tell him because I basically replaced his son, so I basically killed his son, right? Right. And so he's terrified and facing his trauma and this, like, all of these emotions of guilt that he's repressed. And he's like, well, I have no control over the fact that now it's out in the open. And it's heartbreaking because he's just been trying his very best. And you want him to be rewarded for that. You want him to be able to just live this life that's better. And to a certain extent, we get that as an audience because his dad steps up in a way that he doesn't in canon a lot.
True.
And is like, hey, look, you're still a version of my son, so I still care deeply about you. I'm, heartbroken that the kid that I raised maybe isn't in there anymore, but it's still you, a version of you. And
also werewolves exist.
there is also that little bombshell, but in terms of your kid is just absolutely traumatized versus, oh yeah, the supernatural exists. Again, his dad steps up and is like, we're going to prioritize the important things here. Which is something that doesn't happen in canon.
No.
In canon, when he reveals the supernatural, his dad kind of blows him off.
Oh my god.
And it's so, it's a fix-it in the best senses of the word.
There's also the fact that for almost the entire fic, Stiles is trying to figure out a way not only to save people and do what he can in this universe in order to make things right that he thinks is right, but he's also trying to figure out a way to get back. And it takes a while for him to just kind of be like, you know what? I'm just gonna stay. The other Stiles is
it's
lost.
Not even I'm just gonna stay. It's I've within reason exhausted all of my resources.
Yes.
And I cannot go back. And I have to live with that and accept it.
Yes, but there's a point too where he's like, maybe I'm going to enjoy this life a lot more than if I had to stay in the other one, in the other universe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the acceptance part of that.
The end of it has this great couple of scenes, and one of the ones that will always stick out in my brain is the fact that he's kind of an interior monologue, and he's thinking to himself about how he can't get back and how this life is so much better.
Yeah.
And the fact that the only reason he can accept it is because he does feel really guilty about replacing this other Stiles. Like, he had to kill him and get him out of the way. He's like, that's the only way I can accept that this is real and okay.
Yeah.
Because I've literally never encountered something where it's not terrible. It's just sort of this gut punch where he's acknowledging his own sort of trauma and skewed thinking and going, hey, you know what? If this is my road to acceptance is through the fact that this is a tragedy in a lot of ways, I guess that's what we're going with.
You should read the last quote that I have on this.
It's a good thing Stiles is finally figuring out how to let go, though, because this is going to suck for a very long time. But eventually, he knows, even the worst pain wears itself out, and in the end, all that's left is a sore spot you try not to touch. He's looking forward to that. Too bad it'll take years.
All pain takes years to get over. It's true. I wrote that quote down because, I don't know, when I read it again recently, it hit me. It's true. Pain eventually wears itself out. And it's very nice to know, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The best fics out there, I'll leave a little piece of advice for you to take along after you've read it.
Mm-hmm. There's a reason this one sticks in your brain.
Oh, yeah. It's good. It's a really good quote. And there's a reason why this entire fic does, too, because it's a really good fic. I think we're done. I don't know if there's anything else for us to talk about regarding the fic.
Nope.
It was really, really good. If you want to read it, go ahead. It's going to be in the show notes. But the other one, Lotus Eaters, is going to be in there as well. So if you want to go read that and then send us your comments, questions, jokes, analysis, whatever you'd like, go ahead. It's also really good. It's about Kirk and Spock finding themselves stranded on a planet. And you gotta love it. This was really fun. Maybe Metisket will find this episode and send us an email like Anonymous did. That would be fun.
That would be awesome.
Yes. Okay. I think we are done.
Yeah. So I guess we'll see y'all next week on
Fangirls Anonymous. Bye!